Hey everyone, today is Wednesday, February 11th. I'm Mina Durson in for Coy Wire, and I'm so excited to fill in for him while he travels to Italy for the Olympics. Today is Your Word Wednesday, so listen up and see if the vocabulary word you submitted helped us write today's show. We begin with a landmark trial that could have big implications in the world of social media. The trial, which kicked off Monday, centers on accusations that social media giants, namely YouTube and Facebook parent company Meta, are intentionally addicting teens and harming their mental health. Our Claire Duffy has more on how it could reshape the way social media lawsuits are resolved.
Yes, opening statements kicked off with the plaintiff's lawyer, Mark Lanier, referring to these social media platforms as digital slot machines for children. The plaintiff in this case is a 20-year-old woman known as Kaylee, who says she started using Instagram and YouTube as a young child and accuses the platforms of intentionally developing addictive features, things like their endlessly scrolling feeds and late night notifications. And she says those features caused her to develop mental health challenges, including anxiety, body dysmorphia. Now, we also expect during opening statements to get a sense of how the companies, Meta and YouTube, will form their arguments in this case. And the companies have said that they reject this idea that their platforms cause young people mental health challenges. They also indicated during jury selection that they plan to argue that Kaylee's difficult childhood and abusive father were responsible for her mental health challenges rather than these platforms. I'll also read to you what a Meta and YouTube spokesperson told us about this lawsuit. A Meta spokesperson said, "We strongly disagree with these allegations, and we are confident the evidence will show our longstanding commitment to supporting young people." A YouTube spokesperson told me, "Providing young people with a safer, healthier experience has always been core to our work. The allegations in these complaints are simply not true." But this case is really a significant moment for the parents, the families, the advocates who for years have been asking for more accountability and more guardrails from these platforms. This is just the first of hundreds of lawsuits against these companies, and it really could have significant ramifications in terms of how those other cases are resolved. If Kaylee wins this case, we could see the tech companies on the hook for monetary damages and requirements to make changes to their platform. So something that we'll be watching very closely as this trial plays out. It is expected to last through the end of March, and we also expect to hear from executives from these companies, including Meta CEO, in the coming weeks. Back to you.
Now to a quick update on one of the biggest stories out of this year's Olympics, the frightening crash that ended skiing legend Lindsey Vonn's comeback bid. Vonn, who was airlifted to the hospital after that crash, took to social media to provide an update on her injuries, along with a heartfelt message to her fans. Our Scout Richards has more.
Lindsey Vonn has spoken out about her crash at the Winter Olympics. She says she'll need multiple surgeries. There had been speculation that Vonn was not fit to race after she tore her ACL ahead of the competition. But in a statement on her Instagram, Vonn said she had, quote, "no regrets," and that her, quote, "ACL and past injuries had nothing to do with my crash whatsoever." She also said that she sustained a fractured tibia. Despite her injury, Vonn remained optimistic, saying, "I tried, I dreamt, I jumped. I hope if you take away anything from my journey, it's that you all have the courage to dare greatly."
Researchers in China have reportedly developed a humanoid robot that uses AI to help diagnose and treat autism in children. According to state media, the robot is fitted with a non-invasive wearable brainwave sensor embedded in a headband. That sensor picks up on electrical signals within the human brain, converts those patterns into commands for the robot, and generates data that can then be analyzed and interpreted by clinicians. Researchers say the robot can adjust how it interacts to suit each child's unique needs, and can even change its voice tone, giving the robot some verisimilitude.
When a child struggles to respond to certain questions, the robot can guide them more flexibly and quickly towards the correct answer. It also provides therapists with precise baseline data, making it easier for them to work together with the parents to develop personalized treatment plans for the child's next stage of therapy.
More than 13 million people in China live with autism. The robot is already being used in collaboration with hospitals and autism rehabilitation centers. Have you ever played make-believe? Well, it turns out this skill is not unique to humans, and some of our closest evolutionary relatives do it too. A new study from Johns Hopkins University has documented the remarkable cognitive skill in bonobos, a species of great ape that share nearly 99% of our DNA. The researchers took part in a series of tea party experiments with Kanzi, a 44-year-old bonobo renowned for his in-depth understanding of the English language. Here's how it worked. They poured juice into one of two empty bottles and asked Kanzi to pick which one contained the juice, something he got right every time. Then they poured imaginary juice into both bottles, but they also poured one of them back into the pitcher. Kanzi was able to identify which bottle had the imaginary juice a remarkable 68% of the time, higher than if he'd picked at random. The researchers were able to replicate the study with an imaginary grape, which Kanzi passed with flying colors. The behavioral breakthrough has led them to conclude that this capacity for pretend play is not uniquely human, paving the way for it to be studied in other great apes. And it's time for 10-second trivia. Who was the first solo act to headline the Super Bowl halftime show? Was it Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, or Beyonce? If you said Michael Jackson, you are bad to the bone. The King of Pop made his debut on the Super Bowl stage in 1993. His record-setting performance drew higher ratings than the game itself. If you saw the bushes moving during Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show, you weren't imagining things. They were performers. CNN's Zane Heinlein spoke with one of the volunteer actors about blending in during one of the most-watched events of the year.
40,000 people are rumored to have applied for the Super Bowl halftime job. The gig, Be a Bush, but not just any bush. One in Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show.
Like, this is just the arm piece. Like, this is just what goes on my arm here. There's another arm piece that we get, and then there's a headpiece and a backpack and a tunic and a shoulder. Like, it's a whole process.
Atheist flew around 2,500 miles from Philadelphia to San Francisco for the job.
The requirements were you had to be between 5'7" and 6 foot, no bigger, no smaller, and you had to be somewhat athletic and marching band experience, which I kind of had, and also comfortable with wearing a 45-pound costume and not claustrophobic.
Ithia says organizers opted to use people instead of carts with props, since there's a limit to how many can be on the field at once. But one of the hardest parts, he says, was keeping the gig a secret.
It was a very serious NDA. They dropped like 40 people from this because there were people that shared stuff on TikTok.
While he didn't get to personally meet Bad Bunny, he says just playing a small part in the show was more than enough.
As a Jamaican, being surrounded by, people of all these different cultures and ethnicities and, a Puerto Rican superstar that is, on a global scale, we all feel like, we're Puerto Rican, last night. But at the same time, we all felt human. We all felt like we were people of the same planet.
Today's story getting a 10 out of 10.
Man, this is Santos Vagos.